You're absolutely right. I mean, what I discovered was, of course, that she was hunting for a man in England from 2013 onwards, when her marriage had crashed and she couldn't find anyone in Canada at the time. And she wanted wealth and she wanted fame. And there's no doubt she targeted Harry and found someone who was a childhood friend of his who could introduce them.
Listen to that very carefully, because this doesn't sound like romance. It sounds like reconnaissance. This wasn't about destiny or chance meetings. It was about access, positioning, and opportunity. When someone is described as hunting, you have to ask, was Prince Harry ever truly seen as a partner, or was he the ultimate prize? And if this relationship began with targeting and introductions through carefully chosen intermediaries, how much of what followed was ever organic? Once you strip away the fairy tale gloss, this starts to look far more calculated than accidental.
Well, I think it's very toxic. I think they do their best, the Windsors, Prince Charles, the Queen, to kind of keep it cool, but it's just impossible, especially with Harry's memoir about to come out. But ever since Meghan left Britain and then did the Oprah Winfrey interview, it's been really poisonous.
Toxic is a loaded word, and it's not one used casually when discussing the monarchy. This wasn't a misunderstanding, a bad press cycle, or a family disagreement that got out of hand. This was a sustained breakdown that intensified the moment Meghan left Britain and detonated with the Oprah interview. That interview didn't just air grievances, it scorched bridges, hardened sides, and made reconciliation nearly impossible. And with Harry's memoir looming like a ticking bomb, you have to wonder, was peace ever an option, or was escalation always inevitable?
At the end of the book, I realized how successful she'd been. Here was a woman who was nothing. I mean, born, broken family, the whole thing, unknown actress, all the rest of it, becomes a global star, which is what she wanted. When she was about 9 or 10, she said to her father, I want to be famous, I want to walk down the red carpet. And she has now done that. And she's calculated that she could be a great success. And by marrying Harry, she did it. And so
Are they in trouble now, though? Is the Sussex brand on the downward slope? A lot of American friends of mine are completely done with them, which they weren't even a year ago.
Sure.
This is where the story becomes deeply uncomfortable for supporters. Because when you strip away emotion and loyalty, the numbers tell a brutal truth. By almost every measurable metric, the strategy worked. The ambition was there from childhood. The hunger for fame was never hidden. And the red carpet dream wasn't just achieved. It was fast-tracked onto the world stage. This wasn't gradual success, it was instant elevation. And Harry wasn't simply a partner in love. He was the gateway to relevance, influence, and global power that no agent, audition, or career grind could ever deliver. But here's the part that changes everything. Momentum doesn't last forever. The spotlight that once amplified every move is starting to flicker. The brand that once felt untouchable now looks fragile, overexposed, and increasingly questioned. Even in America, the very market that was supposed to be the safe haven. Former allies are stepping back, media tone is shifting, and enthusiasm is cooling. When applause turns into fatigue, the same fame that built the platform starts to expose its cracks. And that raises the most dangerous question of all. One no PR team can answer. When fame is the foundation of a relationship, what happens when the spotlight dims and the audience drifts away? When relevance becomes harder to maintain, does the bond strengthen? Or does the pressure force reinvention at any cost? Because history suggests that when celebrity becomes survival, the next chapter is never quiet. It's desperate, unpredictable, and often the most revealing of all.
But Meghan is only thinking about herself. And that is the problem. I don't think anything the royal family can do is going to help them. And in the end, Penguin won the battle to delay the book.
That line cuts straight through the noise, because it signals something far more dangerous than a family rift. It suggests there is no safety net left. When self-interest becomes the primary engine, loyalty turns conditional, and fallout becomes acceptable collateral. At that point, relationships aren't protected, they're leveraged. The royal family, for all its history, influence, and power, cannot negotiate with someone who refuses to compromise or pull back once lines are crossed. And once publishing houses, memoirs, contracts, and strategically delayed books enter the equation, this stops being an emotional dispute and becomes a permanent record. Words are frozen in print, accusations are archived, and intentions no longer matter. At this stage, Damage control isn't about stopping what's coming. It's about bracing for impact and surviving consequences that are already locked in, timed, and waiting to land.
She's very tactile, she's very seductive, and she landed him on the first night, even on his own admission. He says, I realized on the first date, she was the one. And of course that's because she's also a great, in that sense, an actress. She knew exactly how to play.
This reframes the so-called whirlwind romance in a far more unsettling light. When attraction is paired with strategy, emotional intensity can blur into manipulation before anyone realizes what's happening. Harry himself admits the speed, the certainty, the instant conviction. But were those feelings nurtured naturally or expertly accelerated? When someone knows exactly which emotional levers to pull, love can feel overwhelming, intoxicating, and absolute. And once that dynamic is established from the very first night, the balance of power may never truly recover. And here's where the story turns from controversial to combustible. Because once fame becomes the fuel, silence becomes the enemy. Every interview, every documentary tease, every carefully placed leak starts to feel less like coincidence and more like choreography. The public isn't just watching a marriage anymore, or that they're watching a long-form campaign where attention equals survival. And when relevance starts slipping, escalation becomes the only move left. So the real question looming over all of this isn't about titles, interviews, documentaries, or even explosive books still waiting to drop. It's about control of the story, control of public sympathy, and control of how history will ultimately remember this fallout. Who is actually steering the narrative now, and who is merely reacting constantly one step behind? Because when one side survives on restraint, tradition, and silence, while the other thrives on exposure, escalation, and spectacle. A collision isn't just possible, it's guaranteed. And history has shown us again and again that the most destructive chapters aren't written at the height of the conflict, but right at the moment when everyone claims it's finished, when defenses are lowered and attention drifts. That's when the final blows land, quietly reshaping reputations long after the cameras move on.
I mean, nothing that came out of Meghan's mouth in that interview had not been rehearsed, all very carefully planned. And that was one of the headlines that she wanted. She sought to damage.
That statement changes how the entire interview is viewed, because it suggests nothing was spontaneous, nothing accidental, and nothing emotionally raw. If every word was rehearsed and every pause calculated, then this wasn't a confessional, it was a performance. A performance designed to dominate headlines, steer outrage, and lock in a very specific narrative. When interviews stop being conversations and start becoming scripts, authenticity becomes optional, and impact becomes the only objective. And the most explosive implication here is intent. This wasn't collateral damage or unintended fallout. This was targeted. The idea that Camilla was deliberately placed in the line of fire reframes the interview as an act of strategic destruction, not emotional release. In royal terms, that's nuclear, because reputations inside the monarchy are built over decades and shattered in minutes. Once that line is crossed, there's no walking it back, only doubling down or watching the consequences unfold.